welcome back to another video. Today we get to launch my old rocket that I built about 4 years ago. I built it out of plastic bottles and just some cardboard and then some tape. There, for the nose cone, I did use some thicker office paper. And then for the guides for the launch, I also used just regular office paper. But it was pretty simple to make. I think it took me like just a few days when it could have taken me a whole day if I just focused on it. But it's really easy to make. And so yes, we gotta launch that today. I will be comparing the Estes rocket and my homemade, the Estes engine and my homemade engine to test to see which one has more thrust and more power to it. The only difference between my engine that I made in my last video is that this time I didn't use steel. I used cardboard tube just to make it lighter because steel is very, very heavy. But without further ado, let's compare the engines. So starting off by comparing these two engines, I used the E12-6 engine for Estes engine for the Estes test. And this engine is actually relatively big compared to the previous engines I've launched. Actually, it's the biggest I've launched so far. And so the ingredients that Estes uses in their engines is aluminum. They also use sulfur and then potassium carbonate. But in the homemade engine, it uses some similar ingredients, but it's typically, the one I used was the R-Candy engine, which I used in my last video. It's the same fuel. The nozzle diameters were exactly the same between the two engines. I didn't measure out specifically, I sort of eyeballed it and they looked pretty much the same in size, about 1/4 inch in diameter. The max thrust for the Estes E12-6 engine is 33.3 newtons, which is a lot of thrust. But this rocket weighs about 300 grams, and I believe it was like just a few grams short of the maximum capable weight for launch for the Estes engine. I reckon it shouldn't have even launched because it was so heavy, but it actually did. The max thrust for the homemade engine, I have not tested it yet. I don't have a load cell. That's something I would like to do in the future, but again, it's kind of expensive because you need to buy a lot of different tech components. The average thrust for the Estes E12-6 engine is 11.2 newtons. Like I said before, it's also unknown. I don't know the average thrust for the homemade engine. The burn time for the Estes E12-6 engine is 2.4 seconds. And compared to the homemade engine, that's really short. I don't have an exact time for the burn, but it is a long time. It's a long time, yeah. But then in retrospect, in conclusion, the Estes engine is $6. The Estes E12-6 engine is $6 every time you use it. So that engine costs $6, while the homemade engine costs about $2. I think it's even less because it really is cheap. But again, it uses some different ingredients. Now the big suspense for me was that I had no clue on how much thrust my engine was going to provide. Let alone I did change a few things from my previous build. In my prior build, I used steel and a washer for the nozzle. I used a steel pipe and then the washer as the nozzle. But this build, I decided to make something lighter because steel has a really, really, really heavy density. And I decided to use cardboard because it's like, I think 8 times lighter than steel. But the thing is, cardboard is it's flammable. Steel isn't. So I attempted to use, because I can't really glue a washer onto a cardboard very well. It doesn't have the best gluing stuff, yeah. And I decided to use the kitty litter and then sort of glue on top of it to protect it, and then sort of glue the kitty litter to the actual piece of cardboard. So I got the kitty litter wet, and then I sort of bashed it in and then covered it with glue and hoped and prayed that it would work. And let's just say that kitty litter is not very strong, but there's definitely no foreshadowing there. I'm not foreshadowing in the least bit. But anyways, let's go launch that E12-6 engine and see how high our rocket goes.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
So the E12-6 engine did launch my rocket. It did have enough thrust to lift something that heavy. And you couldn't see in the video, but it ended up going about 50 to 60 feet, which isn't that high, but was higher than I would think based on how heavy the rocket was. But what you also didn't see was that it sort of crashed in someone else's backyard. So this brings me to another point. I've been recently looking for launch sites for rockets because as I get into higher powered rockets, I need to be very safe on where I launch it. And where I live, we don't have a local rocketry club. I think the closest launch site is about an hour and 30 minutes away. And that would be there, and then back is 3 hours, which I don't really have that time on my hands. So I'm going to sort of put a hold to the high-powered rocket stuff, as well as I'm going to college in the next few weeks, and I will sort of explain that in my next video of what my plans are for the future for this channel and for the upcoming year. But let alone, let's see how well our kitty litter holds up in that homemade engine. So here you go.
3, 2, 1. Three, 2, 1.
Yeah. So about that kitty litter being used as a nozzle, it doesn't work. The pressure inside the engine is just too great that it just melted the glue that was holding the kitty litter and then pushed it out. So the nozzle size ended up going from a 1/4 inch to a whole inch. It was 4 times bigger. And so what it ended up doing, instead of being an engine, it ended up being a smoke. Yeah. But good news, I have purchased a nozzle that is already molded onto the engine, which means that we can successfully launch this rocket if the engine has enough power. And we can also test my fuel, like in the last video, without the nozzle popping off. So that is good news, and I plan on releasing that video within the next few weeks when my engine arrives. But before that, I'm also going to post another video just on my future plans for this channel, like I mentioned earlier in this video. What I have, my plans for this year, since it's my first year going to college, and I don't want to flunk out. So I'm gonna go over all that stuff in the next video, and it should be out within the following week. And I also want to thank you guys so much for 76 subscribers. This video being my 4th video, but 76 subscribers within just 3 videos, which I think is absolutely crazy. I really do appreciate your support, and please, if you know anyone that would be interested in this type of content, please let them know about this channel. I have no words. I never expected to grow this quickly, but thank you again for your support, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next video. Take care.